Hi YouTube, this is Joe Calton with Calton Cutlery. You can find us on the web, caltoncutlery.com. You know, I got the new camera a couple months ago, something like that. So I decided I'd go ahead and shoot a new video on the forge that I use the most here in the shop. I think it's going to surprise you on which one it is. I do run well, I've got a little forge, a medium-sized forge, a sword forge, a Damascus forge, and a foundry furnace. They all work on the same principle. It's the smaller one that I use the most. So I figured with the new camera and hopefully, you know, I've gotten a little bit better at shooting videos over the years. I believe I shot a video on this one when I first started making videos. And I looked at it the other day and it's really grainy, and anyway, I just decided I'd redo it. First things first, before we start talking about building forges, running forges, forging, anything like that, get one of these. Okay, this is a carbon monoxide detector. Before you even think about getting your materials and your parts together to build a forge, get a carbon monoxide detector. I ran for a long time without one of these things. My friend Ed Fowler, one day we were talking about it, and I told him I didn't have one, and he just about came unglued. I mean, I thought he was going to reach through the phone and throttle me because I did not have a carbon monoxide detector in my shop. These things are really handy to have. Not only can they save you from dying on your shop floor, but they can also help you tune the mixture in your forge so that it runs you know, as efficient as possible. You know, I want to say I bought this one at Walmart. It's a Kitty carbon monoxide detector. It is covered in dust because it stays out in the shop all the time. The thing I like about this one is that I believe it's got a low battery thing that, you know, tells you when the battery's low, and it also tells, this screen right here tells you your parts per million of carbon monoxide. So it's not just a, hey, there's carbon monoxide, no, there's not carbon monoxide. It tells you how much there is. It also alarms at a different rate according to how much carbon monoxide you have. Okay, so if this thing goes up to say 50 or 70, you know, it might not alarm for a half an hour because that's a much lower level. If the level gets higher than that, it'll alarm in a shorter amount of time. And you know, I have had it go off several times, but without having the instruction manual, I couldn't tell you exactly, you know, what rate that it does that. So anyway, before you start building forges or before you start running forges, unless you're doing everything outside, get the carbon monoxide detector. So we got that out of the way. The second thing is, when I built this first one that I'm going to show you in a second, I went off of a tutorial that for the longest time I couldn't remember where I got it. Well then, just this morning I remembered, hey, I printed those instructions out and put them in my first logbook. So I have a copy of them right here that I'll take, show them to you right quick. These were off of, oh, we got the focus. That looks pretty good. This was off of Indian George's website. Now I went and just looked up the website a second ago, and it looks like the page is down. So anyway, so it's pretty much the design of forge that I built, and it looks like his website is no longer out. So anyway, so I'll go over mine. I didn't follow his plans exactly because I didn't have the materials that he had. But anyways, we're going to go over the forge and maybe even get a chance to fire it up right quick. So there is my most run forge. It's a very small one. It is built, let me get a measuring tape. I want to say I built it out of a semi-truck drive shaft. It's very small, but it does most of what I need to do, unless I start getting into making large billets of Damascus, working on larger kitchen knives that are forged, of course big choppers, things like that. But it's a surprisingly versatile little forge. The dimensions are, outside diameter is 4.5 inches. The burner body is 8.5 inches long. So 4.5 inches by 8.5 inches. It's got front and rear doors that just come up on hinges. There's angle iron right here that supports a little piece of, you can either use a little bitty piece of fire brick, or this is fire board that I got from, I want to say Ellis Knife Works maybe, or High Temp Tools. They'll sell you not only fireboard, but also the KO wool or Ends wool. There's several different manufacturers of it. And the satinite, which is the refractory clay powder that you mix up to coat the refractory blanket. This refractory blanket is, I guess it's sort of like the old asbestos, in that it needs to be coated or rigidized, because it'll let loose fibers that get in the air, get in your lungs, and it's not such a good thing if it's not coated with refractory cement. Or there's another product called like a rigidizer that pretty much does the same thing. Anyway, so the body of the forge is just it's just a tube basically. A tube with some legs welded onto it to hold it up off the bench. Like I said, the door is just a top open, and the rear door looks the same way. So you can choke this down, leave both doors closed, leave both doors open. You know, there's quite a bit of versatility in there. But pretty much all it is a tube lined with refractory. You can even cast that if you want, a hard castable material. The burner part, I use a blown burner. Okay, so it is, a lot of guys use refractory, or not refractory, atmospheric or Venturi style burners. The one I use has got a blower on top, and it's really, really simple. What we have is a hose coming from the propane bottle. Okay, we've got a 1/2 inch ball valve. This is what you use to turn it on and turn it off. Okay, it's necked down into a 1/4 inch pipe nipple. Then it goes to a 1/4 inch needle valve. Alright, now I got this from the salvage yard, so and it does leak by a little bit, but I'm using it to control the amount of volume, not a on and off type of deal. So I'm not sure where you would get another one of these. Another 1/4 inch pipe nipple. That's going through a 1 inch 90-degree elbow. I have support welded on here to hold this up. It goes into another 1 inch pipe fitting, and then that goes into the burner holder that's welded onto the side of the body. For the air inlet here, we have the blower, which I've got another one that I can show you here in a second. It's going into a 1.5 inch street elbow, reduced down to the inch pipe, goes into an inch gate valve to control the amount of air coming in. So your air comes in this way, your fuel comes in this way. This pipe nipple is welded through this 90-degree pipe fitting, and then the gas actually comes out here, mixes with the air coming through, ignites, and is pushed into the forge. So now we'll go ahead and take this off so you can take a look, see what it looks like. What I did was, and on a couple of the other ones, I've actually welded T-handles onto these bolts. It makes it a lot easier to get them in and out. But you'll notice where the dust line is on here, so I know I put it back in the right position. But you loosen that bolt up, it allows the burner to come out. Check, make sure you're still somewhat in focus. Okay. Now this tube will unthread. Okay, and now you see the end of the 1/4-inch pipe nipple that has been passed through a hole, cut in the 90, and then welded in place. Okay, now before I put that 1/4-inch pipe in there, I cut the end with the threads off and then tapped it to accept a small stainless steel bolt. So these threads, tap these threads in, and then you have the orifice. The orifice is nothing but a stainless steel bolt with a hole cut in there. It looks to be about a 1/16 of an inch. It was the smallest drill bit I could find. So that makes these removable. So you can pull these out, put one that's a larger diameter in there if you need it. I messed with that to begin with. To begin with, running this forge, I didn't know all that much about regulators. And so for the first 5 years that I ran this forge, I ran it on a barbecue regulator. Barbecue regulators are measured in I believe inches of water column, something like that. So they're not even in PSI. So they run at about a half a PSI worth of pressure. This new pressure regulator I have, it's basically the one for like a turkey fryer. It'll go up to 30 pounds. So that really woke this forge up. This little forge, like I said, it's pretty small. The inside dimensions after the KO wool, they usually start fairly round, and then as you damage it, then you go back in and patch it, and then so they kind of get all wonkified. But it's roughly 3 inches in diameter, and it'll be about the same 8.5 inches. The ends are pieces of the tube that were cut off, about an inch of it or so, and then just a piece of plate welded to it to make a door, and then lined with the same refractory blanket and satinite. So anyway, here's the blower right quick. We got 7 more minutes left. These are the blowers that I use. They are some sort of a fan that comes out of a dishwasher that my appliance repairman buddy gets for me. And I want to say the one that's on the small forge is the original one that I put on it 10 years ago when I built the thing. You just got, here are your 2 connections where you put the hot and the cold side, or hot and the neutral side of your 120. Put it in there. The one that's up there has got a switch, and they just sit there and run. I don't use a dampener, you know, like over the face of it or anything. I just control the air by the valve. So anyway, so let's go ahead and fire this thing up, and you can see it run. I like the long-handled lighters. Start your flame. Open up your gas. Hit the switch on your air. Usually makes a little bit of a pop. And then now we get to running. If you'll notice, let's see, I'll have to get the tripod here out of the way. Okay, you'll notice the flame coming in. Can't really see a whole lot of it, but it is coming in off center. Alright, so it's not coming in directly in the middle of the pipe. It's up a little bit. And what that does is it makes that flame do a swirling motion. Okay, so that swirl goes all the way around, and that's what makes this style of burner or this style of forge heat so evenly. Okay, if I do close the doors, it'll get quite a bit hotter for the amount of gas that you're using, because of course, you know, you're not losing so much heat. But you will have a hot spot right in front of where the burner comes out, but the rest of it runs really nice and even. And anytime you build a new forge, or anytime you work with a forge, you'll have a little bit of time, you know, let's say the first 2 or 3 times you use it, that you'll be learning that forge. You know, where the hot spots are, where the cold spots are, how long it takes a certain size of piece of steel to come up to temp, you know, all that sort of stuff. What I really like about this, the blown style of forge, is that you've got an enormous amount of control. So just a couple of quick ones. I mean, I can open these doors up, close them, open up the little bitty doors or close them front and back. I also have complete control over how much air goes in there. You see how much air goes in there through the gate valve, how much gas it goes in there through the needle valve, and then plus also the amount of pressure that you're running on your regulator. So it's very, very controllable. I have brought this thing up to temperature and then backed it off and put a piece of steel in there, and it will come up to a nice red/orangish color, and you can leave that piece of steel in there, you know, until you run out of gas, you know, for days, and it will never reach critical temperature. Or you can make the adjustments, run it up a little bit to where it will just barely reach critical temperature. Or I have done forge welding in this. I've made small billets of Damascus. I've also made mokame in it. It'll run really, really hot. Now the way I've got it set right now, I've got the door closed so that hopefully we'll get it up to temperature before the video runs out. But I think the last thing I was doing with this forge was forging out some razors. I don't think I was forging them. I think I'd already had them forged, and I was doing the heat cycles. I was bringing it up to temp, letting them air cool, doing the normalizes. There we go. So you can see that flame coming out, see it heating up real nice inside. While we're waiting for that to heat up, the forge behind it, that is my upright Damascus forge. That one's built a little bit different in that the flame comes in, the burner is right there. So the flame comes in at the bottom, makes a swirl as it comes up, and so you get a much more even heat on your Damascus billet. That arm on the side is a holder for, it's got a clamp up here so that you can pull that out, and then it'll hold the piece of steel that your billet is welded onto. And it runs pretty much the same burner, only a lot larger. It's a 1.5 inch pipe instead of 1 inch, or maybe it's 2 inches, I'm not sure. My other one is the middle size forge. It's basically a carbon copy of this one, only larger. It also has a sliding rack that'll come out to hold the handle on your billets. I've forge welded, and I don't believe I've done any mokame in that one, but it's a pretty good forge for doing choppers and stuff. It's got an extension that goes on the back so that I can do longer stuff if I need to. The ginormous sword forge at the bottom, it's for heat treating swords, and it's a 40-gallon gas water heater, so it's pretty large. Anyway, in just that short amount of time, we're running out of time here on the camera. You can see we're starting to get some nice heat in there. We're not quite up to forging temperature yet, but you kind of get the basic idea of the whole thing. Anyway, so when you're building forges, build them as small as you can. You get much more work per dollar spent in gas. They're cheaper to build, and like I said, this one, I mean, I've done up to, you know, say an 8-inch camp knife in it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you build one of these, get a carbon monoxide detector, and we will see you next time.